Listen, I need you to understand something before we get into this mess. My name is Vrel, and I'm what you humans would call a xenobiologist. Except, well, I study you people. Yeah, I know. Exciting stuff. Really gets the ichor pumping. For 3 cycles, I've been stationed on the observation post orbiting your little blue marble, documenting the most mundane species in the galactic database. Humans. The ones who couldn't even figure out faster than light travel yet somehow managed to argue about whether their planet was round. Spoiler alert, it is. I checked. But then Kessa had to go and ruin everything. Kessa was my research partner, a Thranix with 4 arms and approximately 0 patience for what she called my negativity. I called it realism. She had this ridiculous obsession with human mythology, specifically the stories your kind told each other in the dark when you were still figuring out fire. Dragons. Vampires. Bigfoot. That sort of nonsense. It's all just evolutionary psychology, I told her for the 900th time, manipulating the holographic controls with my lower tentacles while my upper ones held my nutrition cube. Predator avoidance instincts manifesting as cautionary tales. Nothing more. Kessa's bilateral eyes narrowed at me from across the observation deck. Her scales shimmered that particular shade of purple that meant she was about to say something I wouldn't like. You know what your problem is, Vrel? I have a feeling you're about to tell me. You don't believe in anything you can't measure with your fancy instruments. She gestured at the sensor arrays with 2 of her hands while the other 2 crossed over her chest. 3 years watching Earth, and you still think you understand everything about them. I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound came out as a series of clicks that the translator rendered into something approximating human mirth. I understand that they're predictable, irrational, and utterly ordinary. They tell stories to cope with a universe that terrifies them. There's nothing mysterious about that. Famous last words, right? You can see where this is going. The alert came through during Gamma shift, when most of the crew was in deep rest. Just me and Kessa awake, monitoring the standard data feeds. Agricultural output in the southern hemisphere. Weather patterns over the Pacific Ocean. Political tensions in approximately 47 different regions because apparently humans can't go 5 minutes without finding something to fight about. Then the sensors went absolutely berserk. Vrel. Kessa's voice had gone flat, which was never good. You need to see this. I floated over to her station, my bioluminescent patches flickering with irritation. Probably another satellite malfunction. Or maybe a meteor shower. Something boring and easily explained. Except the readings made no sense. That can't be right, I muttered, my tentacles dancing across the controls to double-check the data. The energy signature is off the scale. Nothing on Earth generates that kind of output. Not even their primitive nuclear facilities. It's coming from North America, Kessa said quietly. Her scales had gone completely white, which meant she was either excited or terrified. Possibly both. Colorado. Middle of the mountains. Middle of nowhere. The thermal imaging showed something that shouldn't exist. A heat signature the size of a small shuttle, moving through the forest at approximately 60 kilometers per hour. But here's the thing that made my internal organs do uncomfortable things. It wasn't mechanical. The signature was organic. Living. Pull up the visual feed, I ordered, my earlier confidence evaporating like water on a hot surface. Kessa's hands moved faster than I'd ever seen them. The holographic display flickered, then resolved into a crystal-clear image of the Colorado wilderness at night. Trees. Rocks. A small dirt road winding through the terrain. And then it moved into frame. By the Great Void. It was massive. Easily 12 meters long, not counting the tail. Scales that reflected the moonlight like polished metal. For legs that ended in claws the size of human vehicles. Wings, folded against its back but still visible, membrane stretched between bone that looked sharp enough to cut atmosphere. A dragon. An actual, literal, impossible dragon. Tell me I'm hallucinating, I whispered. Tell me the observation deck has a carbon monoxide leak or something. Our species don't hallucinate from carbon monoxide, Kessa replied, but her voice was shaking. Vrel, this is real. This is actually happening. The creature, because I refused to call it a dragon even though that's exactly what it was, lowered its head to a stream and drank. Just like that. Casual as anything. Like it did this every night and nobody had noticed for the past several thousand years of human civilization. How? The word came out strangled. How is this possible? We've scanned this planet. Every centimeter. Every electromagnetic frequency. Every thermal band. There's no way something that large could have hidden from our sensors. Kessa was already pulling up historical data, her 4 arms moving in perfect coordination. Maybe it wasn't hiding. Maybe it just wasn't there. What are you talking about? She threw an image onto the main display. Then another. Then a dozen more. Historical accounts from human databases. Cave paintings. Medieval manuscripts. Asian scrolls. Native American oral traditions. All depicting the same thing. Dragons. The humans have been reporting these creatures for millennia, Kessa said, her voice taking on that lecturing tone she used when she thought she was right about something. Which, irritatingly, was most of the time. Every culture. Every continent. Different names, different details, but the core description remains consistent. Mass hysteria, I countered, but my conviction was crumbling. Shared mythology. Cultural contamination through trade routes. Or, Kessa said slowly, turning to look at me with all 4 of her eyes, maybe the legends are true. Maybe these things are real, and they've been here all along. The dragon, because fine, it was a dragon, spread its wings. Even through the sensors I could feel the power in that movement. The membrane caught the moonlight, revealing patterns that looked almost like circuitry. Bioluminescent markers running along the bone structure, pulsing with a rhythm that matched nothing in our database. Then it looked up. Directly at our satellite. I'm not exaggerating when I say my 3 hearts stopped. All of them. Simultaneously. It can't see us, I said, but I didn't believe it. We're in stealth mode. Cloaked. Invisible to every known form of detection. The dragon tilted its head, and I swear by every deity in the galactic pantheon, it smiled. Lips pulled back to reveal teeth that belonged in a nightmare. Then it opened its mouth, and light poured out. Not fire. Not plasma. Light. Pure, coherent light that looked suspiciously like a directed energy beam. Evasive maneuvers. I shrieked, but it was too late. The satellite went dark. Just, poof. Offline. 3 million credits of sophisticated observation technology reduced to expensive space debris in under 2 seconds. Silence filled the observation deck. The kind of silence that comes right before someone says something incredibly stupid or incredibly profound. Kessa spoke first. We need to tell the council. Tell them what? I demanded, my tentacles flailing in agitation. That everything we thought we knew about Earth is wrong. That humans have been sharing their planet with creatures that shouldn't exist. That one of those creatures just casually destroyed our surveillance equipment like it was swatting an insect? Yes, Kessa said simply. Exactly that. I floated there, trying to process what we'd just witnessed. 3 years. 3 years of careful observation, detailed documentation, and smug certainty that humans were simple, predictable, and thoroughly understood. All of it wrong. The council is going to think we're malfunctioning, I said finally. They'll order us back for psychological evaluation. Maybe, Kessa agreed. Or maybe they'll send a research team. A proper one. With actual funding and better equipment. Or, I said, a horrible thought occurring to me, maybe they'll escalate this to a military concern. Unknown species with advanced capabilities. Potential threat to galactic security. You know how the brass thinks. Kessa's scales flickered through several colors before settling on a worried green. We can't let that happen. If humans and these creatures have coexisted for this long without destroying each other, there must be a reason. A balance. Something we don't understand yet. Something we don't understand is right. I pulled up the sensor logs again, running the footage in slow motion. The way the dragon moved. The intelligence in those eyes. The deliberate targeting of our satellite. This wasn't random. It knew we were watching. Which means it's intelligent, Kessa added. Possibly as intelligent as humans. Maybe more so. And it's been hiding. Successfully. From a species that launched satellites and built nuclear weapons and mapped their own genome. I felt my confusion transforming into something else. Something that felt uncomfortably like respect. That's impressive. Terrifying, but impressive. The comm system chirped, making us both jump. A message from command, wondering why Satellite 7 had gone offline. Standard procedure. They probably thought it was a technical malfunction. If only. What do we tell them? Kessa asked. I looked at the frozen image on the display. The dragon, wings spread, mouth open, destroying our technology with casual ease. And I thought about all the human stories we dismissed. All the legends. All the eyewitness accounts that got filed under delusion or fabrication. What if they'd been telling the truth all along? We tell them the satellite suffered a catastrophic systems failure, I said slowly. We'll need time to investigate before filing a full report. Kessa's eyes widened. You want to cover this up? I want to understand it first, I corrected. Before we start a panic or, worse, an intervention. We have 6 more satellites in orbit. If these creatures are real, if they're really down there, we need more data. More footage. More evidence that will convince the Council this isn't just a glitch or a hallucination. And if the dragon destroys those satellites too? Then we'll know they definitely don't want to be observed, I said. Which raises even more interesting questions. Kessa was quiet for a long moment, her scales shifting through a rainbow of uncertain colors. Finally, she nodded. Okay. But we do this right. Full documentation. Multiple redundancies. And if things get dangerous, we report immediately. Agreed? Agreed. We spent the next several hours repositioning the remaining satellites, trying to get coverage of the area without being too obvious about it. The dragon had disappeared, naturally. Probably back to whatever impossible hiding place it had emerged from. But now we knew. We knew they were real. And according to every database we had access to, humans knew too. Or at least, some of them did. The ones who got laughed at. The ones who got called crazy. The ones who swore they'd seen something in the mountains, in the forests, in the deep places where satellites didn't look too carefully. There's a human settlement about 15 kilometers from where we spotted it, Kessa said, highlighting a small town on the map. Population roughly 2,000. Mostly mining and tourism. Tourism for what? She pulled up the town's information page. Dragon sightings, apparently. They sell t-shirts. Of course they did. Because humans would commercialize literally anything. We need someone on the ground, I said, an idea forming. A terrible idea. The kind that gets researchers fired or eaten. Someone who can investigate without drawing attention. Kessa turned to stare at me. You're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting. I'm absolutely suggesting what you think I'm suggesting. Vrel, we're xenobiologists. Not field agents. Not spies. We observe from a safe distance using expensive equipment that apparently dragons can destroy at will. Exactly, I said. Which is why nobody would suspect us. We go down there. Disguised as humans. Blend in. Ask questions. Maybe find out why these creatures have stayed hidden for so long and what made this one decide to show itself. That's the worst plan I've ever heard. You have a better one? Silence. Because she didn't, and we both knew it. Fine, Kessa said finally. But if I get eaten by a dragon, I'm haunting you for the rest of your life. Deal. We started making preparations. Biosynthetic disguises. Forged identification documents. Crash courses in human social behavior that went beyond academic observation. It would take a few days to get everything ready. A few days to prepare for the most dangerous, stupid, and potentially revolutionary research expedition in the history of our careers. Because here's the thing about legends. Sometimes, just sometimes, they're not legends at all. Sometimes they're just truth waiting to be discovered. And we were about to discover a whole lot of truth. Whether we survived it or not. So here's what nobody tells you about pretending to be human. It's exhausting. The biosynthetic suits were top of the line, military grade, capable of fooling even close-range medical scanners. But they itched. Constantly. Like wearing a full-body rash that you couldn't scratch because the skin wasn't technically yours. Kessa kept adjusting her face, which made her look like she was having a stroke. Stop that, I hissed as we walked down the main street of Pine Ridge, the tiny mountain town that apparently sold dragon merchandise to tourists stupid enough to believe in fairy tales. Irony, you're a cruel mistress. You look suspicious. This nose feels wrong, she complained, touching it again with fingers that she still hadn't quite figured out how to coordinate properly. Humans only had 5 per hand, which seemed inefficient, but whatever. How do they breathe through these tiny holes? Very carefully. Now smile like a normal person and stop drawing attention. She smiled. It looked like a threat display. Not like that. Less teeth. More. Warmth. Humans are weird. Noted. Now let's find someone who actually believes in dragons and won't immediately call the authorities when we start asking questions. Pine Ridge looked like every other small American town I'd studied from orbit. One main street. A couple of restaurants. A gas station. A store that sold exclusively items related to the local legend. Because of course it did. The sign read, Dragon's Den Gift Shop, and the window display featured stuffed animals that looked nothing like the creature we'd seen. Too cute. Not enough existential terror. A bell chimed as we entered, and the smell of incense hit me like a physical force. My human nose, inadequate as it was, still managed to be offended. Welcome, called a voice from behind the counter. The woman was elderly by human standards, probably 70 or 80 years old, with white hair and eyes that looked far too sharp for someone selling tourist trinkets. Let me guess. You're here about the sighting. I froze. Kessa froze. We both stood there like malfunctioning robots until the woman laughed. Relax, kids. You're not the first researchers to come sniffing around. Though I gotta say, your timing is interesting. Researchers? I managed, trying to sound casual. We're just tourists. Heard about the local legends. Thought we'd check it out. Aha. The woman's expression said she didn't believe a word. And I'm the Queen of England. Sit down before you hurt yourselves. She gestured to some chairs near the counter. Against my better judgment, I sat. Kessa followed, still looking uncomfortable in her human skin. My name's Margaret Torres, the woman said, settling into her own chair with a sigh. Been running this shop for 40 years. Been living in these mountains for 70. And before you ask, yes, I've seen them. Multiple times. Them? Kessa asked, leaning forward. As in, more than one. Margaret's smile widened. Oh honey, there's a whole family up there. Has been for generations. Maybe longer. We don't know exactly. I felt my borrowed heart rate accelerate. Multiple creatures. A breeding population. This kept getting better and worse simultaneously. Why doesn't anyone believe the sightings? I asked. There must be hundreds of reports over the years. Thousands, Margaret corrected. But who's going to take us seriously? Small town folks claiming we see monsters in the mountains. The government investigated back in the 60s. Called it mass hysteria. Case closed. She leaned back, her eyes distant. But the thing is, the government knew. They found evidence. Physical evidence. Scales. Burn marks. Things that couldn't be explained. They just decided it was better to keep it quiet. Why? Kessa asked. Because people panic, Margaret said simply. Imagine telling the world that dragons are real. That they've been here all along, living in the wild places where humans rarely go. Some people would want to hunt them. Others would want to worship them. Either way, it would end badly for everyone involved. She stood up, walked to a back room, and returned carrying a wooden box. Inside was a single scale, roughly the size of my hand, shimmering with that same metallic quality we'd seen through the sensors. Found this 20 years ago, Margaret said softly. Up near Crystal Peak. Still warm when I picked it up. I've shown it to scientists. Geologists. Materials experts. Nobody can tell me what it's made of. The molecular structure doesn't match anything in the databases. Because it wasn't from Earth, I thought. Or maybe it was, and Earth had more secrets than any of us realized. Why are you telling us this? I asked. You don't know us. We could be anyone. Margaret looked at me with those sharp eyes. Because 3 nights ago, something changed. The dragons, they've always been careful. Hidden. They avoid humans, we avoid them, everyone's happy. But Sarah, the big female, she flew right over town. Middle of the night, but people saw. People with cameras. This is going to blow up soon, and I figure whoever you really are, you might be able to help. Help how? Kessa asked. By making sure when the truth comes out, and it will come out, people understand these creatures aren't monsters. They're intelligent. Peaceful, as long as you don't threaten them. They've coexisted with us for thousands of years without incident. Margaret's voice hardened. I don't want to see them hunted or captured or turned into some military experiment because people are afraid of what they don't understand. Guilt hit me harder than expected. Because that's exactly what could happen if we reported this wrong. The Galactic Council could authorize intervention. Containment. Study through dissection. Can you take us to where the sightings happen most often? I asked. We'd like to see for ourselves. Margaret studied us for a long moment. Then she nodded. Tomorrow morning. Dawn. Meet me here. Bring good hiking boots and keep your mouths shut about where we're going. We agreed, purchased some unnecessary dragon merchandise to maintain our cover, and left the shop. Well, Kessa said as we walked back to our rented vehicle. That was unexpected. She knows we're not human, I muttered. Or at least, she knows we're not normal tourists. But she's helping us anyway. Why? Because she's desperate, I said. She knows something's changing. The dragons are coming out of hiding, and she wants allies before everything falls apart. That night, I couldn't sleep. The biosynthetic suit maintained my human appearance even in rest, but my mind kept racing. We'd come to Earth expecting to study a simple species. Instead, we'd found evidence of a hidden world that had existed alongside human civilization for millennia. How many other species were we wrong about? How many other planets had secrets we'd missed? Dawn came too quickly. Margaret was waiting outside the shop in a vehicle that looked older than some civilizations I'd studied. She drove us up into the mountains, along roads that barely deserved the name, until we reached a trailhead. "From here, we walk," she said. "About 3 hours. The path's rough, but the view's worth it." The hike was brutal. Human bodies, I decided, were terribly designed. Too many joints that could twist wrong. Not enough limbs for stability. And the breathing, the constant need to pull oxygen into lungs that never felt quite full enough. But Margaret was right about the view. We emerged onto a ridge overlooking a valley that seemed untouched by human development. Dense forest. A river cutting through the center. Mountains rising on all sides like natural walls. "This is the sanctuary," Margaret said quietly. "About 50 square miles of protected wilderness. Officially, it's a nature preserve. Unofficially, it's their territory. The dragons. They've lived here for as long as anyone can remember." "How many?" Kessa asked. "We think 6. Maybe 7. It's hard to get an accurate count when your subjects can fly and turn invisible." "Invisible?" I nearly shouted. "They can turn invisible." "Not exactly invisible," Margaret corrected. "More like, they bend light around themselves. Camouflage. Active camouflage that adapts to their surroundings in real time. That's why your satellites and your sensors never picked them up before." "How do you know about satellites?" I demanded. Margaret smiled. "Because I'm not stupid, and neither are they. You think we haven't noticed the increased orbital traffic over the past few years? You think they haven't noticed?" She pointed to the sky. "They know you're up there. They've always known. They just didn't care until recently." "What changed?" "Sarah's egg hatched. First one in 30 years. She's protective. Aggressive. And when your satellite got too close, when it started tracking her movements too precisely, she decided to send a message." The pieces clicked together. The dragon hadn't randomly appeared. It had deliberately revealed itself, knowing we were watching, knowing we'd see. A warning. "Where is she now?" Kessa asked. Margaret checked her watch. "If the pattern holds, she'll be heading to the river in about 20 minutes. Morning hunt. She catches fish for her offspring." We waited. I'd never been good at waiting. My tentacles, disguised as human muscles, kept wanting to fidget and flex in ways that human anatomy didn't allow. Then Kessa grabbed my arm. There. She was magnificent. Even larger than the satellite footage suggested, moving through the air with impossible grace for something that size. Scales caught the morning light, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Wings that defied every principle of aerodynamics I'd ever studied. Sarah, the dragon, descended toward the river. And she wasn't alone. A smaller dragon, maybe a quarter her size, flew beside her. The offspring. Learning to hunt. Learning to fly. Learning to hide from the watchers in the sky. "They're beautiful," Kessa whispered. They were. And terrifying. And completely impossible. And absolutely real. Sarah landed by the river, folded her wings, and for just a moment, she looked directly at us. Those eyes, intelligent and ancient, assessed us with the same clinical interest we'd been using to study humans. Then she looked away, apparently deciding we weren't a threat, and returned to teaching her child how to fish. "Now you understand," Margaret said. "Now you see why this matters." I did. Oh, I really did. We stayed on that ridge for 2 hours, watching the dragons. Documenting everything with equipment that Margaret somehow knew not to question. And I thought about the report I'd have to write. The decision I'd have to make. Tell the council everything and risk intervention. Or protect the secret that humans and dragons had maintained for thousands of years. "What are you going to do?" Margaret asked as we hiked back down. Like she could read my mind. I don't know yet, I admitted. But whatever I decide, it won't be because I don't believe anymore. Good, she said. Because belief is the first step toward understanding. And understanding is the first step toward coexistence. That night, back at our temporary base, Kessa and I reviewed the footage. The data. The impossible evidence of a species that shouldn't exist but did. We could change everything, Kessa said quietly. This could revolutionize our understanding of parallel evolution. Hidden ecosystems. Intelligent species coexistence. Or, I countered, we could destroy the last sanctuary these creatures have. Because once the truth is out, there's no putting it back. Governments will want to study them. Corporations will want to exploit them. Someone will definitely try to weaponize them. So we lie. We say the satellite malfunction was just equipment failure. No, I said slowly. We tell the truth. But we tell it carefully. We emphasize the peaceful coexistence. The intelligence. The fact that humans have known about them for millennia and chose protection over exploitation. We make it clear that intervention would be catastrophic. The council might not listen. Then we make them listen, I said. Because this isn't just about dragons or humans anymore. It's about proving that different species, even ones as different as these, can share a world without destroying each other. If they can do it, maybe the rest of the galaxy can learn something. Kessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay. We do this right. Full documentation. Complete honesty. And we fight for them if we have to. Fight for them, I agreed. 3 days later, we transmitted our report. Every detail. Every recording. Every impossible piece of evidence. The response came back within hours. The council wanted a full presentation. In person. With recommendations for how to proceed. We were either about to make history or destroy the last secret Earth had managed to keep. Either way, I finally understood what Margaret meant about belief. Sometimes legends exist because the truth is too strange for anyone to accept. Until you see it with your own eyes. Until it appears right there in front of you, wings spread, scales shining, ancient and impossible and absolutely real. And then you have to decide what matters more. Being right, or doing right. I chose the latter. I just hoped it would be enough.